Hello, women's hockey fans. Erica Elayala and Rachel Donner back on the microphones. Same duo, new location. That's right. We are bringing our women's hockey conversations over to Black Rosie Media. Rachel is going to be joining me here for today's show, but Black Rosie Media will be having at least a weekly episode where we cover women's hockey, and we have a new show called At Even Strength. It is going to be your all-access pass to all things women's hockey. We're talking PWHL. We'll dabble into NCAA and, of course, international ice hockey tournaments, since Black Rosie Media is accredited for the Olympics. Grassroots, interviews, hot topics, cultural intersection. We're doing it all. And so excited to bring Rachel along for this first episode at Even Strength. Rachel, I know you were a little bit under the weather around the recent holiday here in the U.S. So how are you feeling?
Much better. You can actually hear me now, which is a change from a week ago. So that's good.
Well, we are excited to have you here at Black Rosie Media for this episode as we launch again our women's hockey podcast. And so for today's episode, folks, we again are introducing At Even Strength. We're going to do a little hot and not. So we have some games. Every team in the PWHL has played about at least 3 games now. We have a few more going into this weekend before the Rivalry Series, or I should say the international break, which will include the Rivalry Series. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, we will pick our game of the week coming up and dive into a little bit of the Seattle Torrent and New York Sirens camp and start so far. Those two actually just went head to head here in Seattle, Rachel, so we'll have plenty to talk about. But when we look at the standings, I mean, when we did our previews when we were at the other network, we had concerns about Boston, we had concerns about New York, and even Toronto as well, if they were going to be kind of an up and down team. And I guess they were like, okay, whiteboard material, because as things stand right now, Boston is at the top of the table. You've got Toronto, Minnesota, and New York rounding out that top 4. With their first ever outright win, the Seattle Torrent are now in 5 ahead of Montreal, Ottawa, and Vancouver. What is the most surprising, both on the good and the bad here for you, Rachel?
Yeah, I think, when we look at the expansion teams on paper, they look very, very, very good. But we have to remind ourselves that it takes a while for new teams to gel and develop chemistry. Yeah. And it's not going to be perfect from day one. I do expect things to get better for both of those teams moving forward. I think the bigger surprise is Boston right now. I think I am so thrilled for them. As a noted Boston sports hater, I think that, losing Hillary Knight as a cornerstone piece of that team, regardless of if you think they, replaced her skill wise, right, and scoring wise in expansion and the draft and all of that, but just from an emotional heart and soul of Boston pro women's hockey, for her to be gone, that left a hole there. But I do think that also created some opportunity and, for them to play with a little bit of edge. And they've been extremely good so far, and defensively playing almost lights out. They only have 1 goal against in 3 games, 2 shutouts. Like, incredible start to their season.
Yeah, and we definitely never doubted Erin Frankel, right? We've talked about that. One, like, just, never had a doubt there. I agree with you. I think it's a new look. I think another team that I'm pleasantly surprised about, and again, on paper, not necessarily had questions because they're a younger team. I think they have a lot of speed, but that I've always had concerns about New York and their leadership. But what we also have talked about in the past, Rachel, is that the moves that the New York team made even just look at the draft, right? And all of the movement that they had in the draft, it seemed like this was a team that knew they had to course correct. And so similarly to what you were talking about with Boston, I mean, you let go of Alex Carpenter, Ella Shelton, Corrine Schroeder out the door. I mean, and on and on and on.
Abby Rock.
Abby Rock, exactly. And you're like, what is going on here? But I think what we're seeing, and this honestly is something that I've talked about in previous women's hockey leagues, but I think what we're seeing now is it's not just about the names, right? You have to get big names in the league on teams, but we're seeing now that these players are reacting and responding to teams built for them to be successful, for their skill set. And with a leadership team from the coaching staff and front office that knows how to utilize them, because you had Abby Rock, you had Alex Carpenter, you had Ella Shelton, and it just felt like New York didn't know what to do with those players.
Right. I do think this sort of reset that the Sirens have had, and, I watched both of their preseason games and I was there for their home opener. So I've seen them, try to build this system over 3 or 4 games watched solidly for this team. And I do think that this reset is so helpful for them, and it's building a system with these new players. And I think their draft picks are making the most impact on this team overall. I mean, obviously, Micah Zandy Hart as the captain, leader of the blue line, extremely important, and, and has played well. But I think, Taylor Gerard has also played so well, right?
I was waiting for her.
Third line, don't sleep on that third line for the New York Sirens, because
I love it.
So good, right? And so I think that they're just creating a culture there that's different than was there before. And I think Sarah Fillier is having bridged the two kind of cultures. I think it's really interesting because she's able to take that leadership role in a way that she couldn't last year, because there were too many other personalities and too many other quote unquote stars of women's hockey there for her to emerge as the number one. And now, even though she was the number one draft pick, with all those other players there, now she's the leader with all these other incredible hockey players that came in through the draft. And then you have your veteran support players. Like, they're putting together something special. It may not come to fruition this year when all is said and done, but they're putting something together there.
Yeah, I love it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about New York and definitely Seattle, since you and I both in the last handful of weeks really have been able to follow these teams. So I want to get into
and we got to talk about that last game.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I have thoughts. I have thoughts. And
speaking of Alex Carpenter.
My goodness. But so another team,
Kaylee, oh my God, Kaylee. Anyway.
But Vancouver, I've been high on Vancouver, not figuring it out. They are dead last, other than their overtime win against the aforementioned Seattle Torrent. They have struggled. And I think for me, the goals against is really concerning, right? We're also going to talk about Ottawa. We always talk about Ottawa, I feel like, because we're always trying to figure out Ottawa. But, those two teams right now are the only teams with, 10 plus goals against. Ottawa charge 13. And we're going to talk about that because I know we love us some Gwyneth Phillips here. We're going to talk about that. And then the Vancouver Golden Eyes with 15 goals against. That's got to be better. So let's do a little hot or not. We'll keep talking about the standings and the teams, but with a little hot or not. Kind of alluded to this, but I'm going to ask you for a definitive answer. Hot or not? We'll start with the expansion teams. So let's start with Seattle. Hot or not right now, Rachel?
I'm saying hot. It's not 100% for hockey reasons. It's also the vibes.
Vibes are hot.
Vibes are hot. Vibes are very hot. Hockey
Yes.
has to catch up a little bit. I know they just had that amazing win, but still have to catch up a little bit. But the vibes are incredible.
Vibes are great. I agree with you. And so did Steve O'Rourke. I actually asked him first question after that game, what are your overall thoughts? And he took a minute because of what you're saying. Hockey reasons, but vibes are high. I mean, the intro, of course, they promo CJ, which is like, I love to see it. And also it hurts my heart, but that's another conversation, perhaps for another podcast. But vibes are super high, especially because the boys club not playing great. Oh my God, that Edmonton game. That was so brutal. I was just grateful. I was at an event. Actually, shout out to Rough and Tumble here in Seattle that just had their soft launch. Today is their official open of their new location Friday. We're recording here on Friday, December 5th. They have a new location in Columbia City, so shout out to them. If I had to watch that, I'm glad that at least there was a great DJ, a bingo, a drag queen bingo leader there. Like, we were having a good time, even though that was a terrible score for the Kraken. Anyway, back to the women's hockey. Vibes super high in Seattle. Very dramatic win. We know what their goal song is, like all of the things. So I think I'm like, they're trending too hot. They're not like properly hot right now, but yeah. As far as Vancouver, I think we know the answer. It's a not.
It's a not.
It's a not.
That is for sure.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, you hate to put it all on one person, right? But Sarah Nurse being out is really tough for them.
That's a big
loss for them. But it's no excuse in terms of the overall quality of play and the lack of execution. And when, like, for instance, when I saw them play against the New York Sirens at the Sirens home opener in person, after the game, I asked Brian Nadolski, the head coach, I was like, look, it was very clear that all of your offensive rushes were one and done. Like, you never got second chances. And he paused for a second and was like, that's fair. And and it was very indicative of what's going on there, right? Is that, they have the pieces there. They just aren't executing. And because if you can't regain possession of the puck, or don't have a system in place where you're going to get multiple chances in a rush, like that's why you get odd man rushes going in the other direction.
And then,
and you give up goals.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's not her fault. It is not her fault.
Yeah. Speaking of, our next hot or not topic is Ottawa, but very specifically Ottawa defense. I mean, it's a not.
Or not, or lack thereof, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they are really struggling to adjust defensively and contain. Right. They are they're kind of backing up into the zone, right? And just allowing other teams to skate into the zone and then start the defense in a lot of ways. Right. And that's not going to cut it. You got to cut people off in the neutral zone, right? You got to it's so basic, but you have to say, you got to get active sticks in the neutral zone and try and cut the play off before they get set up. And I think they know how to do that. I have faith that they can do it. They just haven't been.
They just haven't been doing it. And I mean, unfortunately, that's the name of the game when it comes to Ottawa. Like, they found a way to get to the finals last year, and all of those games went to overtime. So there's some bark, right, still left here. But the consistency, at least early on, seems to be an issue again. I'm actually going to call an audible here because we already talked about Boston, but there is another topic that I am very curious to hear you actually talk a little bit more about. So I'm going to go hot or not heated rivalries.
Oh, hot. Very hot.
So hot right now.
I know it's about boys. This is a women's hockey show. I understand that. But this show, much like women's hockey, is for the girls and the gays. So, and I've read the books too. So
Ooh,
let's be
okay.
clear about that.
Okay.
It's spicy. It's fantastic. I am having a great time. I think they're doing a really good job of the adaptation. As of this recording, we've got 3 episodes in so far. You should absolutely watch Heated Rivalry. It's on Crave in Canada. It got distributed through HBO in the US. Hopefully more places around the world for the rest of y'all moving forward. But yeah, it's a good time. It is a very good time. Shane and Ilya are in my heart and soul. But do not sleep on Scott and Kip. Scott
Ooh,
Hunter.
okay.
Scott Hunter of the New York Admirals.
I have to catch up. I am aware of Heated Rivalry. Ava and I have talked about it like in passing. I was definitely on an anti colonizer kick for the holiday that just passed. That's just my vibe. And Ava was like, well, you can support this. And I was like, you're absolutely right. So I have to check it out. I haven't read the books, haven't seen the series yet. But speaking of heated rivalries, we are going to talk about the Rivalry Series coming up here. We have a roster for Hockey Canada, so they put out their roster this time first. We also have an official announcement, although I'm not sure any of us are surprised, about the Olympic head coaches for Hockey Canada. And of course, we have a schedule. We're also going to talk a little bit about the U.S. sweaters that were unveiled for the Olympics because, Rachel, we have to circle back to what was the most disgusting display in a heated rivalry situation that I have ever seen in the legend, the icon, Megan Bozak in a Hockey Canada sweater. Sammy Joe Small, you owe us here on the U.S. side. You owe us. And so I better see you in studio in one of these new jerseys. I jumped the gun there because I have strong feelings and thoughts, but now let's get back to it. We've got the Rivalry Series coming up, so the PWHL will take a little bit of a break. We'll break that down in our next segment, but Hockey Canada rosters. We talked about this, Rachel, before, again, when we were on the other network, but we're here at Black Rosie Media now, so let's recap. We know specifically with Hockey Canada that there were some players left off of the roster in the first 2 installments of the Rivalry Series. And it seemed like that was for rest purposes. Sarah Nurse at the time did make that roster, but didn't suit up, which maybe was also rest. Of course, we just kind of alluded to it. She got injured in that first game against the Seattle Torrent, and it is officially listed, I believe, still as day-to-day. But a tough loss, obviously, for Vancouver. We did see Hockey Canada, play without her, but they were unsuccessful in getting a win in those first 2 games. So let's talk through the rosters. And Renee Debienne, I think, is obviously the big name that was left off, and now that we see returning to the Hockey Canada roster for this next installment.
Yeah, and we talked about it before where Hockey Canada was clearly using the first set of games as the audition games, where, they played sort of the backbencher goaltenders in those games and maybe played some skaters that they were looking to see whether or not they're making the team. And then this time around in this set of games that are going to be played next week, it's more about building chemistry, solidifying what the final roster is going to be for the Olympics. I think that's, a really good strategy for them here. And I think that, unfortunately, it does mean that, for their roster, they only have 2 college players. Everybody else is a pro player at this point in the process. But, just even looking at these names on this list, which has to get cut down, like, I do not envy those coaches and having to cut any of these people.
I know, it's kind of wild. So Clark is another player, if I remember correctly, we did not see on the roster the first time around, but players like Daryl Watts, I love how Daryl Watts has been playing. Chloe Primorano is one of those college players. I think, has played really well in international competition. Definitely a younger player here, but if you need some young blood, definitely someone I'm curious to see how she can kind of play with, some of these folks. Renata Fost, Erin Ambrose, Claire Thompson. Nicole Gosling is an addition here, if I remember correctly, from Rivalry Series roster to Rivalry Series roster. Also, of course, we have Julia Gosling and Danielle Sardachny, who I've been able to catch up with here in Seattle. Kristen O'Neill. I believe Jocelyn LaRock is also new from the last time, obviously not new to Hockey Canada, but was not on that roster the last time. And then joining ARD is Emrance Mashmeyer and Kaylee Osborne, who has been looking really good for the Sirens. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this instructs the Olympic roster. As you said, does look though like Hockey Canada once again is going to lean more on their veterans. Again, some of these names are going to be easy Hall of Famers, so it's not a bad issue. It's just a matter of, as we continue to talk about women's hockey, especially with the North American teams, what is the right balance of mixing in young talent with some of these veterans? But again, these veterans are in their prime, looking good. So where does Primerano and Caitlin Kramer is the other NCAA player at Minnesota Duluth. Okay. We also have the Olympic coaches. Again, I don't think it's really a surprise here. We have, of course, Troy Ryan is still leading with Corey Chevery, Carolyn Willett, Brittany Smith, Brad Kirkwood, all named to the staff. Lots of PWHL overlap. Of course, Troy Ryan in Toronto. Carolyn Willett with Montreal. You've got Corey Chevery with Montreal. And then Brad Kirkwood is also with Toronto. So again, just wanted to mention this. Gina Kingsbury is still with Hockey Canada. We have talked about this before. Will PWHL impact what we start seeing as far as coaches at the national level? I don't think that we know just yet, but at least for this cycle, I'm not surprised to see that Troy Ryan is still at the helm. We did hear, though, from Troy Ryan, that goes to the roster that we were just talking about. And another reason why it might be a stacked roster is because the first two Rivalry Series games, both won by the United States, were also played in the United States. And it does seem like at least some of the decision-making, whether even just for travel alone, was to have some of your heavy hitters, some of your big names be available for the games in Canada.
Yeah. And, these couple of games are going to be fascinating to me because I think that just sort of the game of chess that these two teams play, especially given that, there's some other countries that are trying to challenge for their dominance. And there's been like such a hyper focus between Hockey Canada and Hockey USA in terms of preparing rosters and building rosters to play each other.
Yeah.
When they have to look wider than that now, I think, at least to a certain degree. And will any of that affect these roster constructions when all is said and done?
Yeah. I think it's going to be really interesting to see. We don't have too much to talk about with regard to the United States, except that the United States, the U.S. made a kind of big deal of this, but we've also seen that other federations primarily kind of thinking or marketing it for the men, but have unveiled their jerseys. And we talked about Hockey Canada unveiling their jersey. Unfortunately, we had to see it on Megan Bozak. I still have not recovered. I just don't, I did not know that I was going to be so upset about that. And then I was like screaming, shout out again to Rough and Tumble, in Rough and Tumble, because I could not believe what I was seeing. But this is the jersey. One of these is the jersey, Rachel, that I fully expect to see Sammy Joe Small or some other Canadian wearing on the broadcast for the Rivalry Series because we had to endure Megan Bozak wearing the new Hockey Canada jersey. So that's my first thing that I want to say. My second thing that I want to say is, Rachel, I just don't know that USA ever gives enough variation for me personally. We did talk about this a little bit off air, and we talked about the swoosh, like the swoop bang of the USA Hockey days, which is like peak Angela Ruggiero era. So
Right.
I guess it has changed a little bit. I guess I'm thinking more in the more recent history. I'm like, okay, it looks kind of how I thought it was going to look.
Yeah, I mean, there's like 2 or 3 looks, right, that you're going to get. You're going to get the whooshy one. You're going to get this one for this year, and you're going to get the shield, right? That's in like in the shoulder, right? Those are your 3 options for Team USA.
Yeah.
And they're going to just rotate through all of that. Like, that's what we're looking at here.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the one thing that I do actually really like about these jerseys is the back, because the font they're using for the nameplate is this sort of more modern, futuristic-y looking font that they pulled from the jersey that I do not like, that they used last time around, that looks sort of Tron-ish. But that's the one element I did actually like, the nameplate and the font there, and the really like bold red numbers on the back. I really like.
Yeah, that's fair.
So.
For visibility, very fair, very fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got to give them that.
That's fair. Also, just before we recorded, US also announced their staff. Again, not terribly surprising here. We've got, of course, John Robileski. I feel like I always say his name a little weird. Sorry to you, John. Sherry Dickerman, Brent Hill, Josh Seba, and Ali Altsman, who are on the staff. No real surprises here. Not as much overlap in, former women's players as we see sometimes with Hockey Canada. They really bring their stars back to the national team. With USA Hockey, we started to see that like at the 18s and otherwise, but it's taken a little while. I think also maybe that's because USA Hockey players don't necessarily retire and then go off to be coaches. They do other things. So I'm always curious to see how that's going to go. But also super excited that we will see the U.S. team open up against Czechia. You know how I feel about Team Czechia. I'm very curious to see how they perform. Okay, but if you want to tap in.
You know what, though?
Go ahead.
I will say, in the future, I expect Brianna Decker to be
I think so too.
Coach.
Well, she's coaching now in the PW.
Yeah.
We've seen her really do a great job as a top assistant again. And as I think, right, she was the bench boss proper for, I think, the 18s a cycle or two ago. So yeah, I think you're right. I think Brie Dex is a shoo-in.
And I think that we are, due to love, we are losing Julie Chu in that conversation, because I think she would be a Team USA coach were it not for her life, which I do not begrudge her that at all. Yeah, but her life is in Canada, and that's fine.
We lost a good one there.
We did.
We love you, Julie.
But she's a great coach. I just want to acknowledge that.
You can always come back to USA Hockey. Just saying. Yeah. The door is open. And we understand and respect your choices.
Exactly.
Also, do you have an extra bedroom? I don't know. Just for future reference if needed.
We'll babysit. We'll absolutely babysit.
Absolutely babysit. You need someone to pick the pucks up off the ice after practice. I got you. No problem. Lunch runs done. Whatever you need, Julie, we got you. Just adopt us. And the great thing is that we're already adults. So like, you don't have to do much. Just saying. December 10th, 9 p.m. Eastern time. We'll just stick with 9 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. local. And the 13th, also 9 p.m. Both games at Rogers Place in Edmonton, Alberta. And again, Canada is down 2 games here, looking to even it up as a good little, tune-up before they announce the official rosters. I cannot believe we are in December, which means it's almost the end of the year, which means it's basically almost January, which means we're pretty much knocking at the door for the Olympics, which is interesting, Rachel, because apparently Italy is not prepared for an Olympic ice hockey tournament. For those who maybe do not know, NHL ice is technically a different size than Olympic ice. The difference is most pronounced when you look behind the goal, right? Especially the crease. There's more space behind the crease, and there's more space between the face-off dot and the wall and the half wall. So it's wider. It's wider and longer. We're hearing, Rachel, that the ice sheets for the Olympic tournament in Italy are going to be shorter than the 200 feet that we use in the NHL, which means it's significantly shorter than what is Olympic size and Olympic regulation. I just don't, and all of that countdown to the Olympics, and this is what the ice hockey players are going to have to deal with on the women's and men's side.
Yeah, unfortunately, the women are going to bear the brunt of this because their tournament is first. And so not only are they going to be dealing with a rink that's not regulation size, like North American regulation size, but it's also unfinished. And so they could be dealing with, ice, like freezing temperature issues. They could be dealing with uneven boards. There are so many things that they could be dealing with that they're going to be used as like the test subjects. And they'll have a whole week to work things out for the men later on. But it's like completely ridiculous. And it's unfair that the women have to shoulder the burden of being like test subjects for an unproven rink.
And it's just like, how does the IIHF, but more specifically the IOC, how do they let this happen? Because I can tell you, I was in Paris for the Summer Olympics and happened to cross paths with someone who I knew would be also attending the Winter Olympics. It was actually an event, speaking of Angela Ruggiero, that she was hosting. And we were talking, and it's like, yeah, the ice is not ready. So that was what? Summer of 24. Here we are, in 2025, over a year later, and we're time crunched. So what are the options here? Because you mentioned all of the dimensions being different. The ice, it can impact the ice. Hockey players know bad ice. They will be very vocal about bad ice. But the problem is not just like cosmetic. This can cause injury. It can cause injury, let alone how it can impact the speed of the game, the depth perception, all of those things. Defense, I love me some defense, but how do you do gap control? Yeah.
Yep. Even things as basic as wrapping the puck around the boards, 100%. Right? And if there's even like something off with those baseboards, right, where pucks could bounce off in weird directions, our puck over the glass, things are not gonna operate fully and accurately according to people's instinct, and it's gonna be a problem. It's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and so and how does that impact, if at all? Are the teams going to get extra ice time to accommodate the fact that they're going to have to get used to new and different? And listen, you can make the argument, I suppose, if you wanted, there's always, every barn, so to speak, is a little different. Sometimes it's heated or technically cooled a little different. All kinds of things. And yes, that's why you have practices. That's why in a lot of sports you'll see athletes literally kind of, and even hockey players, they'll walk off of their skates, they'll walk around the rink and take a look, get a feel for things. But those are like little cosmetic things. Like there was this viral video of Steph Curry doing just a warm-up, and he botched a dribble, and his first instinct was, oh, there must be something wrong with the court, because I don't just dribble wrong, in his warm-up. And then lo and behold, he found a dead spot. But that's why you do those walkthroughs. But now it's shorter ice. it's potentially temperature and ice issues. This is going to be, how do you work that in? I think they should make those accommodations, because I would assume in a big tournament that you have those things already set. You have your practice times, when you can do your walkthroughs, etc. Is that going to be delayed? Because at this point, the walkthroughs, if they're going to stick on this ice and maybe not move to Switzerland, and just for the record, like, Switzerland is relatively close to where the Olympics is because of where they are in Italy. But we know that Switzerland, yes, exactly. They have ice sheets that are regulation because of a lot of the men's and women's pro teams that play there. So do you move the Olympics? Like we're seeing for thinking of LA 28, they've already announced that 2 events, one water event and also softball, are going to be in Oklahoma because they don't have facilities that they feel can accommodate the tournament. Everything from the crowds to, again, the performance on the fields or in the water. They're both coming to Oklahoma, but that's been announced already. This is literally weeks, Rachel. We've got weeks and nothing but it's not ready, but we're going ahead. Like, this just seems wild to me, not the storyline that I'm looking forward to. But unfortunately, we're going to have to keep talking about it until we figure out if there's a resolution. Like, I just feel like they have to say something more than, oh, well, it's just shorter. Like, that's not an answer. That's not sufficient for what is supposed to be the premier international tournament in the world. Like, that's not okay. Whew, yeah. Okay. Anyway.
You had feelings about that. I mean, I have feelings about it too.
I have strong feelings. Like, do something, people. Do something. But they don't care. It's a money grab. Anyway, we have a few other things that we want to wrap up, including getting you ready for what will be the final few games before this break for the Rivalry Series. Also, want to start with just giving some love to Carla McLeod. We know we talked about Ottawa, and there are some questions as far as that team. It's early, so they'll have some chances to fix it. But wanted to just talk about this. Ava and I talked about it a little bit on a Seattle Torrent specific episode, but Carla McLeod did, make public her diagnosis of breast cancer. And, she has, of course, talked to her doctors and through the teams, through her team, excuse me. And from everything that she's been saying publicly, the good news, Rachel, is that it does seem that she has a positive outlook and prognosis here, that they are able to get her on a treatment plan. A part of the reason that she announced it is that she will have to miss some games, and she's already missed one as the bench boss so that she can stay on track with her treatment. I love the fact that you can tell that hockey means so much to her, because it sounded almost like she was apologetic that she was going to miss these games. I mean, it is her job, but also it's like her health and her life. So I think the support has been overwhelming. They played Toronto recently, and it was their Stick It to Cancer night. We've talked about Erica Howe and her diagnosis as well that she announced as the league got started. So this was an opportunity specifically to support those 2 players that have ties to the sport, this league very specifically, but then also other people. I did think it was funny on the broadcast. Toronto did win that game. Ottawa scored first, but as we talked about, they have some difficulties in the defensive zone at times and defensive discipline. But what was funny is the broadcasters said that Natalie Spooner, usually on those hockey fight cancer type events, it'll be like, I play for, and then you write someone's name. So Natalie Spooner said, I play for Carla McLeod. And the broadcast was like, Carla might say, maybe next time don't play for me. You're going to play against me.
Yeah, she was mic'd up, I believe, too.
Yeah,
which had some fun content.
Yeah, I mean, always a good time. Spooner's a good time. Her game is just so sharp. She's such it's so much fun because, like, you see her, she's got these big bright eyes. She's always smiling, and her game, if you saw her picture and then saw a video of her game, I don't know that many people would match those 2 up, because her game is is tenacious. It is not polite. It is not bubbly. It is direct. It is down your throat. And it's like, I'm a steam engine coming. What are you going to do about it? In the most respectful way. Because it's not like she's a goon or anything. She's just a very skilled, very strong hockey player. So again, you know, Carla, of course, we're with you. Anyone else who's battling with breast cancer, any form of cancer, it is quite the doozy. My family has been impacted a few different times, so we're definitely here for you. I did want to talk, though, a little bit about this Seattle, New York Sirens game that we saw. From my perspective in Seattle, we're coming into second home opener, no goals scored at home. Everyone was dying to hear what the goal song was going to be, let alone who would be the one to make history at Climate Pledge Arena. And of course, it was Alex Carpenter and Hillary Knight involved. So the veterans getting it done. What I did not have written, though, is on a night where you're playing the Sirens, formerly where Corrine Schroeder played, that instead of Schroeds in net, we get the rookie, Hannah Murphy, going up against a team that at the time was one of the best offensive teams, and probably still is, right, Rachel? One of the best offensive teams in the league. Talk about coming up under pressure. Hannah Murphy had a fantastic game. I was a little bit miffed she wasn't a higher star. I get it, like a game winner. Okay, Hillary Knight did have 2 points. Okay, but also the Rook kept the Sirens, the Rook kept the Torrent in that game against the Sirens to even set them up for the game-winning heroics, which we have to also note, Rachel, happened because the Torrent were given a 5-minute power play, a major penalty assessed to Calty on a hit to Wilgren in the corner. And that really changed the game. It was effectively a power play for what was the remainder of the game. And that's how the Torrent were able to get their 2 goals.
Yeah, I think, you know, from a Sirens perspective, one of the things that I've been keeping an eye on so far this season is Christina Kaltenkova, right? First overall draft pick, tremendous skill, very physical, you know, and I think that, you know, one of the things that I talked to her specifically about in the preseason, you could see her trying to test out where the line is and what these refs are going to call, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen that in the first couple of games, you know, few games that she's played, she's continued to do that. And she's, you know, she's gotten called on some pretty key penalties so far. And it's because she hasn't quite adjusted to where that line is. Now, to be fair to her, the officiating is inconsistent in this league.
Oh my gosh, so inconsistent.
So, but there is no question that the call was correct on her. It was in this game. Like it was the right call. But this is something that, you know, you got to just put a little asterisk next to her with this and keeping an eye on it, because she just hasn't figured that out yet. Are the other aspects of her game generally very good? Yes. But this is you know, she is looking real good out there, and that line is a lot of fun, right? Right.
So fun.
But that being said, you know, she's got to keep an eye on that and figure out how to pull back, or like when to be more aggressive like that and when you can't. And you can't do it when an official is right there either.
Yeah. And it's, again, something that we've talked about on the show before, or we've talked about together on our previous show before, is that this want to make women's hockey through the PWHL a little more physical. I don't have an issue with it. And I think we're seeing that the transition and also the interpretation is taking much longer than I personally would like, because the officials are getting used to it. As you've mentioned, Calty is not the only player having to assess and judge what this line is, especially, again, we're in an Olympic year. So they're also thinking and prepping with their national teams about how to restrain and figure out that line when it comes to international play, which is different than what we sometimes see in a league that's based in a specific country like Canada or the US or Russia or Sweden. You know, like there's all of these different variables, including that. Good grief. I was at the two Sirens. I keep saying that. I was at the two Seattle home games, and the officiating was
like inconsistent is being generous.
I was gonna that right. I was like, let me pick my words carefully. I will say noticeable is like the bare minimum of kindness that I can provide. It was definitely noticeable, including the third goal in the first home game. There was a review, even though it was clear as day a goal. Like, I don't know what happened there. There were just some weird reviews. There's been the pacing has been very strange in the two home games in Seattle that I went to, but I'm with you. We know that hockey overall across the board is asking players to be more aware of when they're making hits, because in that case, Anna Wilgren had no space, no time to defend herself from going into the board at the curve at that head first, which is extremely dangerous. And so that part of it, when you look at it, like you said, they got that part right on that specific call. Big break for a Seattle Torrent team who offensively, the finish is just not there. And even in the goals that we saw, they were scrappy goals. They had numbers, of course. They're on a power play, so they were able to pepper Osborne there. It was just
my heart broke for her because it was not her fault. That was like defensive failures.
100%.
Absolutely defensive breakdowns.
You lose a mark, you don't clear the crease, and that's how those two goals happen. I'm pretty sure, we know for sure Hillary Knight was on the ice when she scored, and Carpy, it was like a rebound, and it came out and it went right back. So those are tough ones for Osborne, who had a fantastic game, has had a fantastic season so far. Even though I did miss Curry and Schroeder in net, the storyline of the two Colgate goaltenders in what was an epic goaltending battle, I feel like, again, is going underappreciated because it was Alex Carpenter and because it was Hillary Knight that scored. But those two players, those two goaltenders, had a phenomenal game. And as you mentioned, Osborne was effectively 2 minutes, or if you really break it down, 22 seconds. There was a 22-second sequence that ruined a shutout for Osborne, which would have been very deserved.
I know. Like, that's what was so heartbreaking about that game. Like, honestly, I don't know. It was just very, very tragic for Kaylee Osborne because she played so well. Did. In that
very
game.
Impressed, very, very impressed. Goaltender to watch. We love talking about goaltenders when you and I hop on the mic, Rachel, and we will have opportunity to do that again. But as we wrap up this first ever episode of At Even Strength on Black Rosie Media, let's get folks ready for what we have coming up. Again, we're recording on Friday, so we have today, as of the day this will be public, Saturday, December 6th, a 3 p.m. game, Vancouver hosting the New York Sirens, Pacific Coliseum. Great crowd. And I think we're also seeing that Vancouver is realizing that the venue is not necessarily up to date with what PWHL fans are expecting. Everything from like the bathrooms, they're making some more, so they're turning some men's bathrooms into.
I was like, what is happening?
I know. It's like not too many men anymore, too many women, or, and then also, like other things, conversation I want to put a pin in, especially because of what's happening in Ottawa. I think we absolutely have to talk about facilities eventually. We're hearing that there's going to be expansion, getting us to 12 teams in the next 2 or so seasons is what we're hearing. So how much will facilities play a part and what is the ask. But anyway, we'll get into that. But Vancouver will host New York. I think that's going to be a really interesting game. Vancouver really has to get some giddy up. And they're going against, again, a team that really has a command of what they're trying to do offensively. Can Vancouver learn from what Seattle did? Although I don't know. It was an odd game because New York, I thought, really, again, had the better chances. They got goalied. That's what it is. So Vancouver's going to need to really put on a good performance there. And then you've got Sunday, December 7th, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Montreal hosting Toronto. Which game do you think will give us more fireworks? And I'll let you interpret how you define fireworks, Rachel, but which game are you circling as the game to watch?
I mean, I want to watch the Frost at Boston, on Sunday.
That's right. I'm sorry. I didn't mention that one. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Because obviously you have the team that's currently in first place against the defending champions who are playing generally very well so far this season. So I think this is going to be a good test for Boston, and it's the last game before we go into the Rivalry Series break. Yes. So hopefully it'll be a good note to go out on.
Yes, I'm glad that was your game to watch because I forgot to mention that one is on Sunday, December 7th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you've got Saturday, 3 p.m., Vancouver hosting New York. Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern, Montreal hosting Toronto. And then Rachel's pick for game of the weekend, Boston hosting Minnesota. I agree with you there. I think that I'm going to take Montreal, Toronto, especially because if I'm not mistaken, here's the thing. Toronto in a better place than Montreal right now, as of now, when it comes to the standings. Super early, though, in the season. Things are going to change around. But I think Toronto is coming off of a great win. They're in that second spot right now. Montreal in 6th. Don't imagine that they'll stay there. But something that we mentioned last season, Rachel, when you and I were talking, is that Montreal was able to stay at the top of the table because they were getting points in overtime, specifically getting wins. And I think Montreal is going to want to start to position themselves similarly again so that they don't have to do an overhaul or like we've seen Ottawa do, we've seen Minnesota do, and really just kind of position themselves a little higher. Or alternatively, positioning themselves in a top 4 spot hasn't always benefited Montreal. They still have not made a final. So maybe they do want to kind of rope-a-dope a little here and play a little in the back. No, I'm kidding. I'm sure that is not the Corey Chevery plan. But I think it's going to be interesting to see if Montreal can get some points back here against a Toronto team that I think they're finding their stride. Again, Natalie Spooner looking great. Daryl Watts is always a player that I root for. And we got to see Elaine Chuli get a win, her first win in a Toronto Scepters jersey. I love that we got to see her a lot earlier in the season than we did when she was with Montreal. So that's my pick. I don't know that she gets the game again, but I wouldn't be opposed to having Elaine Chuli go up against Montreal. I'm just saying.
That could be good.
Give us what we want. She had a great performance against Ottawa. So yeah. And Renee Desbiens against Elaine Chuli in net. I would love to see it. All right. Those are the games we have coming up. And then of course the league will take a break, getting ready for Rivalry Series, but we will be here still planning to post as we did on our other platform on Saturday mornings. So this is again at Even Strength, part of Black Rosie Media. Rachel Donner joining me for the first episode. We hope to have you back, Rachel. We have some other contributors that you've probably seen on Black Rosie Media that will join us as well. But as always, we appreciate you tuning in. You can subscribe to Black Rosie Media, follow us on social media, all social media channels, and we'll be right here every Saturday morning with At Even Strength, which is a deep dive into women's hockey. For Rachel Donner, I am Erica L. Ayala, and we will catch you on the next episode. Peace out, women's hockey fans. Enjoy the games.